Bonjour, hello, welcome, bienvenue to this, our third PermaIntern webinar. Our webinar is going to be exploring the supervisor experience. So we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion. I'm going to go around and ask everyone to introduce their projects and their interns, first of all. And then we have a range of questions that are going to cover the achievements, the impacts and benefits of the program, some of the challenges and hurdles that you might have faced, any advice you have for future supervisors or future interns, some of the program learning and network building that it's developed, and hopefully we're also going to have a little bit of fun. So I hope you're all ready. We will have time at the end for question and answers. What I'd like to do is, first of all, just start off by going around the group, and on my right on my screen is Frederick. So if you'd like to start us off.
Thanks, Tristan. I'm Fred, or Frédéric Bouchard. I'm a professor here at the Department of Applied Geomatics, University of Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada. I've been here for 5 years, almost 5 years now, and I had the opportunity to supervise two PermaIntern and SEDNA internees, one in fall 2024, that was Amy Rato from France. And the other one last fall, in fall 2025, Nahuel Huentemilia from Argentina. So I had two experiences, and both of them were involved in mostly lab work here. So working with soils and sediments and that kind of samples, and about the lakes, the evolution of lakes in the Arctic in permafrost landscape. So that was my quick experience since the last 2 years.
Thank you. Next on my list, I see Julie.
Yes, hi, my name is Julie Malenfant-Lepage. I'm a researcher at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Norway. I'm also the current leader of PermaIntern, and Fred is the leader of SEDNA. So I've been a partner in PermaIntern since the beginning in 2022. And I had this year my first intern. So I have a student, his name is Shubhan Jubar. He comes from, he's a master's student. He comes from Bangladesh. And he started mid-October, and he planned to finish at the end of March. So it's a long internship. And he's currently working at NTNU on wave modeling and using different softwares he couldn't, that we have access to at the university here.
Thank you, Julie. Fantastic. I have Robin next on my list.
Yeah, so Robin Zweigel, researcher at the University of Oslo. I had an intern at the very beginning of the PermaIntern project. Saskia Overeem, she went to the Norwegian Meteorological Institute, where she had an internship spanning a whole semester, but part-time, on evaluating different snow sensors for operational use.
Excellent. Miriam.
Yes, hi everyone. So Myriam Lemelin, professor of applied geomatics at the University of Sherbrooke, pretty close to Frédéric Bouchard's office usually, almost office neighbors. I had my first SEDNA intern last fall. His name is Basile Fauconnier. He was from the Université de Liège in Belgium, and he was involved in characterizing the composition and carbon content in soil that we gathered from the Canadian High Arctic a few years ago.
Thank you, Miriam. Fantastic. I'll now pass over to Montreal, to Daniel.
Yes. So I'm Daniel Fortier. I'm a professor at the University of Montreal in the Department of Geography. I'm a geomorphologist, and I'm specialized in permafrost research mostly, or Arctic science, I would say, would be a bit better. So I received in my lab several interns per year from various places. So it's a lab with invited researchers, interns as well, and we pair the interns with other students or invited researchers. In my case, I received Martin Riska from Finland. He is he's from Slovakia originally, but studies in Finland. And I received also Anna Stasiewicz. I don't know if I pronounce it well. She's from Poland. And both of them worked on the same project. In fact, it's a long-term project. It's physical modeling in the laboratory of mass movement, active layer slides, and takes a lot of time. So we're quite happy to have interns. And right now, I receive Chiara Donegan. She's from Ireland. She's a U.S. national, but studies in Ireland. And I co-supervisor with Julie Malenfant-Lepage here and Stéphanie Coulombe. She works on permafrost properties of the northernmost village in Canada, Grise Fiord.
Thank you very much, Dan. Hannah's up next.
Thank you very much. So my name is Hanna Wittfeldt Christiansen. I am also a U-Arctic chair on permafrost, and I'm a professor of physical geography presently at Aarhus University in Denmark. But before that, I've spent more than 20 years as a professor at the University Center in Svalbard. And where I've had my interns so far have been at UNIS in Svalbard. And I can say that very much like Daniel, that I've received a lot of different interns. But through the PermaIntern program, we have had 3 students that I like to mention. And the first one I don't need to say too much about, because that was Mederick Laurie, who you, some of you, met in the very first webinar. And he came to us for a semester in 2023, and he's French. And so the French needs to do internships, and he did his master thesis with using the internship that he did in Svalbard with us, which was coring, obtaining permafrost cores from down to the top permafrost and analyzing these as part of his thesis. That was in spring 2023. And in the autumn of 2024, we had 2 more students, both German, one from the geography in Heidelberg. Her name was Helena Kebers, and she did the same thing. She studied one of our permafrost cores that had already been obtained, so she looked into saline permafrost this way. And the other one was Konstantin Schorling. He was a physics master student also from Germany, and he worked with geophysical data. And all of these students were working on a research project that we've been running for some time now on geohazards related to the village of Longyearbyen where we're living. So they were all kind of approaching us because they want to do that. And I want to add, we can come back to that later on, that we've had a lot of challenges with collaborating with companies in Norway because of the legislation. So we really have experienced that it's better to have the students in research projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. I have Ylva up next.
Yes, I'm Ylva Sjöberg at Umeå University in Sweden, and I have actually not supervised any PermaIntern intern yet, but I've been in the steering committee and in PermaIntern since the beginning. So I wanted to hear from you all about your experiences. That's why I'm here today. Thanks.
And we had Vincent join us. If you want to share anything, feel free and join the conversation.
Yeah, hi. Well, maybe Daniel already told you. I'm Vincent Langlois. I'm usually a professor in University of Lyon in France, but for the last 2 years, I've been an invited scientist here in Daniel's group in Montreal. I also supervised the experimental analog modeling work that we did with Martin and Anna in the lab here.
Thank you, Vincent. Excellent. We're going to have a round of questions on different topics for the rest of the webinar, and feel free to jump in if you've got experiences you want to share or things that you want to add. we're going to start off with all of the good stuff, all of the impacts and the benefits that these internships have brought to, whether it's your research or to themselves and their own training and their development. I think what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the top for this one. Start with Fred. If you could share a little bit about what's worked really well and what were some of the things that you or the interns really got out of the program.
Yeah, I had many things on my list here, but I'm like the students or the internees that learn some basic lab skills. That's one thing. They were introduced in a research group so they could develop their teamwork skills as well. And I'm sure that this is pretty common for other experiences. But one of the things I'm kind of mostly surprised or proud of is that I matched, and I think Dan mentioned that earlier, but I matched the internees with some of my students. So senior students could kind of informally co-supervise the internship, and that was really great to see the some of my own students that were getting more and more confident in their own work, and the internee that could interact with both me and some other students that might have a intermediate position between the supervisor and the internee. So I think that was something that was less in the plans, but that developed further on during the internships.
I think what I might do is I might follow that on by passing to Dan, because I know obviously you mentioned, Dan, you've had people working on projects, the same project. And I wonder if you've had similar sort of experiences of the interns, working with other people and really benefiting from those sort of either peer or near peer kind of collaborations and interactions.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're working on, one of the project right now in the lab is active layer detachment slide, so rapid mass movement that we study in the field. And then we do physical modeling, so small scale models in the laboratory where we try to replicate and isolate some parameters to better understand the process. So that kind of thing takes a long time before we get some results, something like a year or 2 years before we're done with physical modeling. So it was clear from the beginning that the intern, we have very short internship. That's something I would like to discuss later, but he would not be able to see the whole process. So they just jumped in our project right now, and they worked on that. So I had very few expectations, really, so almost nothing. So even it was more for their learning, definitely, than what they could give us in terms of results. So the person leading this was Vincent here. So this is his main project as an invited researcher, and he was training the students. They were basically helping him here and there. The interns I got came from a different background. So Martin was working on remote sensing and snow. Absolutely nothing to do with the internship. And Anna was working on ice caves in Poland. Absolutely nothing to do with the internship. So, and why I accepted them is because they were interested in working in something different. And I believe in that kind of training. We have our specialty, but I like to train my students quite wide, in fact. So that was the idea. And they were paired with Vincent. And also we had other U of M students working on that project, and they were paired together as well. What I really like is that it changes the mood in the lab. So that's why I like to receive so many interns from everywhere. It changed the mentality. It changes the way the Canadian, the Quebecers communicate to others, because we don't have this cultural background. So it was quite interesting for that. Unfortunately, like Martin never saw any signs of landslide in the modeling. So he worked 2 months trying to trigger a landslide that never triggered. We'll send in pictures, we're getting there. But otherwise, it was quite nice. But I had really not a lot of expectation for the results. I'm not welcoming interns to get clear, definite results on research. It's something else in the lab. So we talk a lot about equity, diversity, and inclusion in research in Canada. And this is a way to do that in the lab. So we bring other ways of thinking, other cultures, and then we share. So that was the good point of welcoming interns.
Thanks, Dan. I think the nice passover will be to Vincent and see what his sort of take on his experiences with the interns was.
Well, I guess it was very, very nice to have them here. Well, like Daniel said, it wasn't long enough to get to the results, but it was very useful. Well, for me to have them to help me. Like we built the experimental setup from scratch with them, and they were very enthusiastic about doing something new, something they weren't used to do in their master thesis. I think at least Martin was, like Dan said, was working mainly on remote sensing, and now he was, working with his hands in the lab. So it was, I think he was very keen to participate and to build up the setup. And we tried different things. Some of them, or nearly all of them, didn't work, but he wasn't abated by that. So I think it was positive for him. And Anna was here for a very short time. I think she spent only 1 month here, but it was when they left, they seemed to be happy about the experience.
Excellent, thank you. I'd like to pass over to Hannah.
Yes, it's a little bit like Daniel, and then again also a bit different. So I decided early on that, or very much before PermaIntern, that I want my students to learn to teach as well and learn to interact with other people. So I decided that since we had this challenge with getting students outside academia, we keep them in academia, but I decided that my PhD student would be acting as the host of the project, and I was the supervisor. And that was a very good learning experience, both for the PhD student and for myself. And also, I think for the students, at least that's what they have been writing about things. And I think another point that has been really rewarding for us is that they have really enjoyed that what they did was something they could see would be used directly in our projects. Especially they were working with and for a PhD student. And one of them, the German girl, she has actually analyzed a core that has the data in very close collaboration, obviously, with a PhD student who have now published the data that she has analyzed as well, and thanked her, of course, in her paper, so that they directly can see what comes out of the work they've been doing. Our physics student, who is very interested in geophysics, he set up an automatic ERT system that is now running and is part of the observations. And he knew already when he was there that this would be something that would be a lasting legacy of what he had actually contributed to for us in the project work. And he also very clearly expressed that, I've been studying physics for 4 or 5 years. Theoretically, I've never done it in the field. It's cool to go out and do things in the field. So that is a thing that's really been, for all of them, a major thing. And then we had our French student coming up, and he was Médéric that you met, some of you in the webinar. And he was not at all into permafrost. He was into geohazards and things like that, but he had never been out in the field touching things. And he is now a PhD student in Canada. So on permafrost, and that was very much thanks to him, learning, starting to relax, learn that this is okay in an environment with PhD students, lots of course students as well. So I would say that there's a lot of positive things that has come out of interns. And that is why we're here today. We spend a lot of energy trying to make it happen. And this is very much thanks to Ylva, who took this up and really pushed that we should have this project. So I am all for it, but I'm also looking forward to sharing a little bit of the challenges later on.
Thank you, Hannah. I'll hand over now to Robin, who had, I believe, the first PermaIntern in Saskia Overeem. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was maybe the very first PermaIntern student, yeah. And overall, the internship worked very well. So I was a supervisor. She was at a different host institution, but I knew already the host, so it will work very well to go along this tangent of established relationships. And what I found was that going into an kind of an operational environment was very rewarding for the intern, because when there's suddenly someone who needs your results, then you're very motivated. But also there was less kind of detailed instructions than in academic exercises that they usually get. And then she got very quickly quite independent in her research and analysis. Also, for the host, it was a benefit because she could go into a topic that was too small for any of the permanent staff to prioritize because they have so many tasks to do. But then they could get this this component analyzed as well. And the hosts came back to me and wanted more interns the next semester. So all very positive feedback.
That's always a good sign, and you've got a lot of demand. So fantastic. Thank you, Robin. I'll pass over to Miriam next.
Yeah, so it was the first hosting for me as well. And the internship came up at kind of as a surprise and last minute decision, but a very positive one for sure. So I went to the Arctic for a project that was related to more astrobiology, analog research, in 2022 and 2023. So we went to Axel Heiberg Island in Canada to gather permafrost samples on top of gossans, which are iron and sulfide bearing intrusions that oxidize, and then they generate an environment that's very favorable for different kinds of microbacteria. And we had these samples sitting in the fridge. We conducted in the freezer, and we conducted most of the analysis that we already planned for. And then they're just in the freezer since then. And then Basil came to me with looking for a master's thesis project from Belgium. And he had this space science background and biology as well. And he's like, okay, I'm looking for an internship. Do you have something that I could work on? And I was thinking about these samples, but the project was kind of over. But his background and his knowledge was a perfect match to conduct further analyses on these samples. But the money from that project ran off. So that's when Frédéric told me about the PermaIntern opportunity. So it really helped us establish that match and then generate results that were not expected for that project, but definitely extended beyond what we had planned. And it was a great addition. And so before Basil arrived, we had submitted the paper with our first results from the sample analyses. And then we had Basil work on characterizing the carbon content of the core, and then the organic carbon part, and then do some Raman spectroscopy, try to see if we could find good Raman signal for this, the organic content on the core, and have a better understanding at where these communities, microbial communities, would live inside these samples, and how we could detect them from a remote sensing perspective. And then so we got the reviews back from that paper, and they asked us, have you characterized the organic carbon content on these samples? That would be really nice to see. And we're like, oh, actually, we have a student working on that. So we were able to add Basil's result during his internship to that paper. So now he has his first paper published as a result of the internship. So it's really great.
It's fantastic, Miriam.
Yeah.
makes me think maybe we're going to need a little list of all of the publications that have come out of their interns on the website so we can see the impact they're having on the scientific community. This is great. I'm going to hand over to Julie next. Julie's both a supervisor and she's on the steering committee. So if she would like to both tell us a little bit about her experiences in terms of supervising, and then we can move into the next little stage, which is going to be some of the challenges and the hurdles, which I know at the organizing level is definitely, I'm sure you have plenty to share, Julie. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I had a few comments for the benefits of the program. One thing I realized it's that the students, like my students and other students I had the chance to talk with, they're super motivated and eager to learn. So I was really impressed. They are very grateful to have the chance to participate in the program. And the fact, a bit in the same direction than Daniel, that we're not focused on the results, but more on the approach, it kind of creates like a very positive environment for learning. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I also realized that it's very a good opportunity to do interdisciplinary research as well. My student is a coastal engineering, more in wave science, which I'm not at all. I'm more geotechnical engineering, so we really take time to discuss about our respective knowledge, the issues. He has many so at the end, I'm kind of learning as much than him, but it's very nice. So that's what I realized for interdisciplinary research. It's a very good opportunity to have an intern. Yep.
Thank you, Julie. So I think on all those positives, we've got lots to take away. Everything's not always plain sailing, though. I know it takes a lot of work to get these interns to their host organizations. And as Hannah's already mentioned, there can be some challenges. I'm going to pass back to Julie, maybe to start us off talking about some of the things that we have to overcome to make these so successful.
Yes, I wanted to talk about a challenge I found as a supervisor during the internship, let's say. So for me, it was a bit hard at the beginning to find the balance between the supervision time and my own work, let's say. But I realized at the beginning, maybe we had more frequent meetings. And then with time, the students were coming more and more independent. And it was, so they were more independent in their research work. So that has been my challenges for me in regard of the intern.
Thanks, Julie. Maybe I go back to the top of the list, which is Fred, who started it off.
I have some points. Maybe if we talk later about the, let's say, the organization or the management of the program itself, as everyone on the steering committee knows, it was quite the saga at some point. But I would say for specifically for the internship sometimes, and I think it was mentioned already, I felt like it was kind of too short. We had like resources for 1 month, 2 month long internships, and sometimes I would have probably taken 3 or 4 months to make sure that the project progresses in a good way, and sometimes we felt like we were only starting to have fun in the lab or with the group of students. So I would say for next step, when we talk about the what's next, or I would suggest to have try to have a bit of longer experiences. That was one of my short frustrations with the internships.
Thanks, Fred. I want to hear a little bit more from Vincent.
Well, I didn't do anything administrative because Daniel was in charge and I was just like invited here. So that was the good part for me, because I only benefited from the work of the interns. The good thing was that I was as new to permafrost as the interns were. basically just arrived in Montreal at the time, so they arrived at the same time as myself. I was more familiar with lab work, etc. But basically, I had to learn everything on the spot at the same time as they did. So it was good to have, like, not to be alone in that. And well, of course, it's always useful to be to have several hands to build something. So it was always nice to have them nearby. And as I said, both of them were very motivated. Martin, maybe if we talk about the difficulties, I don't know what was the reason, but Martin wasn't very sure about how much time he was going to stay, and he kept postponing his departure, which was nice of him, but maybe it added some uncertainty for him. And I guess it was also difficult. I don't know if it's the case for all interns, but he was also keep working on his main master thesis or main master project at the same time. So he was like basically by day in the lab, and at night he was still working on his remote sensing project. And I think it was difficult for him. So I don't know if it's common to have like that two projects at the same time, but it was more difficult because of that. But he was still very productive in the lab anyway. So that was good.
I can jump in, Tristan, about that. Yeah, so that with Martin, the thing is that he had a deal with his real supervisor, I mean, master supervisor, that he would be working on his master weekend and evening at the same time as the internship. That was the deal. So, and he said yes. So, but it was difficult. So so he had not a lot of time, you know, just to, and I think that's part of the game, to go in Montreal and visit the place, and he was quite busy, so that was difficult. To jump in on supervision, so I was lucky enough to have Vincent, who did most of the supervision. So like he explained, we designed the project together, me and Vincent, based on research we do in the Arctic, but then he was supervising the student, and it's not important, but we have my lab is split between two campuses of the University of Montreal. So sometimes I'm in one campus, sometimes I'm on the other campus, so that was not necessarily helping. Vincent is mostly in the lab where we have the cold rooms. Like Frédéric mentioned, for me, 2 months or 1 month, even a month and a half for Anna is way too short, way too short. So I would go with internship of 3 to 4 months, something like that. And maybe, because funds are always limited, maybe a way to go around that is to have a part of the internship while they are in their country of origin. So they start remotely with literature reviews. That's what we're doing right now with Chiara and Julie. And maybe also a part after the internship in the lab of my lab, for instance, and they have maybe 1 month after that also, where they could continue maybe working on reports. So they can focus on what they do in the lab, for instance. So that will be something, because it's way too short. And also, students from Europe in general, especially the French system and German system, the master in France, master 1, master 2, this is quite short, and it is quite different than a master with research over 2 years. I'm talking about master students. So they don't arrive trained, I would say, for research. Some master in France, I received interns from France last year for 3 months, and that's it. They work on a project for 3 months. That's going to be the master. It is super different than what we do. Master in my lab are often 2.5 years to 3 years. So that's the equivalent of a PhD in Germany. Not the content, but I'm talking about the length. And the training you get through time also is different. So this is something I would think about for the next intern if I receive. make project different when they don't have a research training. Definitely, they need to be more, and it was like that. I was lucky enough to have Vincent, but if Vincent wasn't there, it would have been complicated because I don't have a lot of time in situ, in the lab, and then the intern would have been by himself a lot, which would not have been a good idea, definitely, in our case anyway.
Some great feedback there. Thank you, Dan. I wonder if Miriam's got anything you'd like to share.
Mostly it went pretty well on our end. So if I circle back to what's been said before, Basile was here for 4 months, which was a reasonable amount of time. He was focusing 100% of his time on gathering the sample data or the analysis in the lab. And it's the data that he is going to use for his master's thesis back in Belgium. So it was really relevant to him, and he was entirely dedicated to working on that, which was really great and positive. He was also eager to do some lab work, but I also don't have much time to go in the lab and supervise him. So we're lucky in Sherbrooke to have lab managers who are there all the time. So Basile was really autonomous most of the time in the lab with the lab supervisor, and they could do the analysis between the two of them. And then to get things rolling fast, so we had the samples already ready when he arrived, and then I wrote a shopping list of here's everything that would be nice to do in kind of logical order from the most important to the least, and then he just worked through that list, trying to do as much as possible, but like it wasn't mandatory to do all these steps, but he worked pretty well through these steps. And then he left back to Belgium with some of the samples, so he can continue on his own to do some additional analysis on these even after the internship is done. So it worked pretty well. I guess the main difficulty on our end was maybe learning the different analytical methods to conduct in the lab. So he did the training during the first week that he arrived, and then he had to learn to use different instruments. So that required quite a lot of time of him. Thankfully, he was really passionate and dedicated, so he went through that pretty well, but still it took a lot of time to get him running on the analyses. And then the instrument don't always work as planned, so we had to troubleshoot and fix some of the instruments that were not working properly, so that took some time off, but overall I would say it's pretty positive on our end.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miriam. So have you got anything, Robin?
Yeah, just quickly on some hurdles. So as a supervisor, I needed to get into like how the student can get the internship accredited. And this was a bit of work to read up on how, like what format is actually accepted. And then also as the supervisor, at least at my university, I'm the one who has to organize everything, but then someone else has to do the assessment. So like I needed to find an external assessor. So this was also a bit of work to find it all worked out, but just some bureaucracy that you need to be aware of. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thanks, Robin. Anyone else have anything they want to contribute on this, some of the challenges you faced?
I'm just curious, Tristan, for the other supervisors, if anyone had some challenges with visa from international internees. For me, it was, we had one resource here at the administration, so we could rely on that person, but I was curious if everyone else, was it cool with the international requirements, or you had to go through hurdles?
I would like to say something which kind of also has to do with this. And I spent quite some time being a supervisor, working with a company, setting up 2 different internships, and we had everything organized. We had 3 meetings, and then the company in the end decided, no, we're not going to do this because we cannot attract national students. And from what I've heard today, none of the interns are within the same country. So they're all international. And this means that the companies back out because then there's so much administrative extra work to be done. It's that they just give it up. They just say, no, it's going to take another half year. And then we tried all kinds of ways to get around and say they're tourists and whatever. So that was a lot of frustration, you could say, doing that. But on the other hand, it's also recruiting students. I think we've heard a lot about what happens in natural science and to some degree in engineering. But we need to understand that permafrost is much more than that. So we need to also recruit from social science, political science, and do much more interdisciplinary stuff. And I think there's a huge potential there that we haven't yet really started using. So getting more supervisors, getting more hosts is the main challenge as I see it. But we also have to see it's a balance because you need to get a system to work. And so Tristan's imaginingly very, very nice work on getting things to work, like organizing this and so on, has been really needed because we all have other things to do, as we just heard. So I think that's a major hurdle, that to find the balance of how many can we put in and test. I would also say, I know of many interns that has come into our system without being part of PermaIntern. So there needs to be a carrot. Why should they be in PermaIntern? And why should we not just manage them ourselves?
I can go ahead with the visa stuff and so on all the immigration processes, and now it's a nightmare. So it's very long, and it's made on purpose to get a visa, especially if you're not American. So for us, we have special treatment for French people and American usually. But for the rest, like a Chinese intern, or that will take forever. I'm talking about maybe 2 months, 3 months before you get the visa. So that's really a problem. Recently, I just learned with Julie that there's a rule somewhere that under a certain number of days, you don't need anything. Visa is a bit of a problem, and that's a lot of work only to receive someone for 2 months. So we maybe have to either extend or think about something, or shorter stay, but then shorter stay, we don't get a lot of results. If it's not for results, that's fine. If it's just to give an opportunity and experience to interns, that's fine if we have low expectation. But visa is an issue for us now.
I like that, Dan. Very, very frank, very open, great sharing your experience. I think actually that is a great point in which we should move on to advice you have for future supervisors or for interns, because I think you've started us off there, Dan. I'll tell you what, I'll open the floor. Is anyone would like to start off with your top piece of advice for someone coming into the program?
My main advice for both the supervisor and the internee would be to come or to visit a lab with an open mind and be ready to learn stuff that you might not be familiar with. And I think we hinted to that a couple of times. We receive students that have different backgrounds, and they learn stuff and they learn how to interact with the rest of the group. So I think open-mindedness and flexibility and be ready to learn new stuff, and for the supervisor to be ready to deal with different backgrounds. As Dan mentioned, it's really at the center of this famous EDI concept that everybody's talking about. But when you have to act on it, I think that's a way to act on EDI, to welcome people from different backgrounds. So that would be my two-cent advice.
And if I can add something on Fred, it's to since we are having internship from different countries, it's to ask them their expectation, because for sure the students, they have different expectation, different of where they're from. So I think that's something important to ask them. And my advice for potential internship hosts would be to really try the program. That's how you really see the benefits of PermaIntern. And so far, everybody that had an intern asked for a second one, not long after.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very my advice to join the program.
Take the opportunity to ask a little bit here. So it's really great to hear how successful, and also of course to hear about the challenges of these internships. I was wondering a little bit about like the motivations we have behind starting this was to provide educational opportunities for students who don't otherwise get them to learn about permafrost. So how are we successful in getting the focus on permafrost? What do they learn about permafrost? Can we do more there? And also, I think most of us, or most of you here, have had like a little bit higher, maybe master level students. Is this at all feasible, you think, for bachelor student interns? So if anyone has any comments on those, that would be fantastic.
You know, Ilva, in my case, I don't think I will go with undergrad intern, because they're not trained. And if they're not trained, they need to be trained. So they need a constant presence during the internship. And I am not at ease to ask a grad student. I'm at ease to put a grad student with another grad student, but not asking, for instance, a master degree student to supervise an undergrad. So yeah, I don't think I would go ahead with that. I do it in my department because they're close and I see them and all that, but I don't think. And I would really, really, really like to receive some PhD interns. Definitely, they're, especially from Europe, they will have a training and then they're in their study and then they're, you know, fully lighted and stuff. That will be very nice. And I don't know if the program is even open for postdoc. Is it?
It's not open, I think.
It's open to anyone, basically.
Okay. And
except they probably don't think of themselves as a student anymore, right?
That's right. So is it possible for postdoc also?
I think it's a matter of us promoting that. We want to see more action like that. I mean, we need to get more supervisors in here, because I think one of the advantages of this meeting is also that you get to share your frustration and you get to share your good experiences, and you need to learn from each other that way, because being a supervisor for someone that you don't know is a new thing for most of us. So that's one thing. And I think it would be really cool if we could come to the stage where we got students to use the platform to say, I'm interested in this, this, and this, submit that to the platform. And then we, as supervisors, could go and say, ooh, here's someone I can help. And magically what we were thinking about when we just started was that the system, I mean, AI has come. The system should be able to match students that has wishes with host that sits there, right? So if they don't find it themselves, here's the suggestion for you coming out of the platform. So there's a lot of work for you, Tristan.
I'll see if I can set up a matchmaking service of some sort that's suitable and appropriate for
but we all need to get more colleagues to, you know, become supervisors and get on the platform so people can start contacting them. But I think there's like some barriers for some people. Oh, they think, there's work to be done. I have to fill out some stuff and so on. So what do I get out of it? And to some degree, we have student experiences on the platform, and maybe we also need to have supervisor experiences, just like this seminar will be our experiences that we can share on the platform as well. We should think about the future, and one of the things that I've been discussing in the steering committee is funding and what happens next. And you know that we have this workshop coming up at the Arctic Science Summit Week in the end of March. That's the end of the SEDNA funding. So most likely there we try to apply for some more funding, because let's face it, we will need funding to move students because they're so international. So in order for this to be sustainable and to be, the matchmaking doesn't magically happen using AI tomorrow, but we need to keep thinking and keep developing and even getting more people involved. And I think Canada is such a nice place to have the SEDNA project because it's a huge permafrost community. We started it off here in the Nordic countries. But it would be good to keep going, have another application round in Canada to support this, and also maybe support it for 2 to 3 to 4 years, if possible, with some funding for actually allowing these a bit longer experiences. But what we aim for at this workshop that we have at the Arctic Science Summit Week is to write up our experiences, both based on this meeting, but also based on the student experiences that we have. And then basically come up with a suggestion for what's next. And the smart thing is that the Arctic deadline for applying for projects in Canada is in April this year. So that's actually a possibility for continuing the program that way.
And so what I found a bit funny is that it was quite some work before starting the internship of the at the host, but then I didn't hear anything for the whole internship. It was very, very self-going, and then it was only when I had to get the credits at the end that I had to actually interact with them again. So it was very self-propelling.
Yeah, I can add something as well that I learned. But in fact, I learned a lot about water engineering in Bangladesh and all the how they deal with a lack of data and instruments. And sometimes my intern was coming with idea. I was like, oh, wow, I should try that in the Arctic. I mean, it's going from one extreme to the other. But yeah, it was very, very nice and surprising.
Julie, I love that anecdote. That's a really great example of that sort of cross-cultural diversity and how you're learning from having that diversity in your lab.
Yeah, even came with is if you're by a river and you don't have anything to measure the current, is you take a can of Pepsi, you drink it halfway, put it at the upstream of the river, calculate time to the downstream. Is that's pretty much, according to my experience, not too far from the instrument. I was like, okay, maybe I should start carrying cans. So, yeah.
In a meeting with Anna at the end of the internship, so we arrived at this lab at the other campus. We have no restaurant in this building, so we arrived with our lunch, and she had that fantastic cabbage soup from Poland. So we met, and very quickly it was smelling so good during the lunch that we took a break, and I noted this cabbage soup recipe, which is my best cabbage soup recipe now. So that was nothing about science, but these are little things on the side that are quite cool with interns. Yeah. Now I have someone from India, so maybe I will upgrade my naan breads skills. Who knows?
Well, one fact, the last internee from Argentina, we learned that he was a pretty good musician. He played the drums and the piano, so he was staying at one of my students' place, and they were able to jam together, and that was quite, again, another extra way to build relationships. So I don't know if we could add a section into the interview. Do you play any music instrument? But I've experience with that. It's pretty efficient to build or to mix in a new group.
Any last comments, Julie, Fred?
I've said enough.
Yeah, I think I would like to thank everyone for participating to the webinar. It was super interesting. I really enjoy hearing all your comments, experience about the program. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for leading the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hope you all have a fantastic day.
Okay.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Tristan,
Bye.
for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Bye-bye.